Have you ever wondered what might happen if there is an item in your house that once belonged to a person who died long ago? It seems like just a harmless object, a memory, a relic. But what if such things are not just material objects, but a kind of portal for invisible energies? Edgar Cayce, the legendary sleeping prophet, a man whose predictions and visions shook the world, said that some items can be dangerous if they have retained the energy of their past owner. They can attract things to you that you cannot even imagine. Imagine an old jewelry box bought at a flea market, which perhaps once held letters from a deceased woman, or an antique ring worn by a person who died under strange circumstances. Cayce claimed that such things can carry not only memories, but also emotions, fears, and even illnesses. And if you do not know the history of these objects, you are playing with fire. Do you think this is just superstition? Think of how many stories exist about cursed jewelry or sinister paintings. Take the infamous Hope Diamond, for example. Tragedies and deaths swirled around it. Cayce said that every material and every object retains the energetic stamp of the one who owned it. And sometimes this stamp is so strong that it begins to influence new owners. He warned, "There are things that should never be kept." This is not just empty talk, but lessons drawn from the depths of the subconscious when, in a trance, he saw the past, present, and future. He claimed that a person's soul leaves something invisible on their possessions, like a shadow that can haunt others. Be honest. Have you ever felt strange tension when holding someone's old thing, as if it carries some kind of secret? Cayce believed that such sensations are not fantasies. There is indeed something in these objects. In one of his readings, he said that things that have witnessed strong emotions are particularly dangerous. Fear, anger, jealousy, or pain leave a special charge on material objects. If these things fall into other hands, their energy can switch to the new owners, as if passing dark signals to them. Interestingly, Cayce called clothing and personal jewelry the most dangerous carriers of someone else's energy. He said that through fabric and metal, not only the energy of the body is preserved, but also emotional traces, sorrow, melancholy, anger. Can you imagine what might happen if you wear a ring that belonged to someone who died in despair? How many stories exist about people who bought antique jewelry and suddenly started getting sick, suffering from nightmares or even encountering unexplained misfortunes? But the most interesting part, this is not just a horror tale or an attempt to scare you. Cayce emphasized, the energy of things is part of a world we do not understand, but which exists regardless of our skepticism. He claimed that such items can be cleansed, but this requires knowledge and special spiritual strength. Simply throwing an item away is not always enough. Sometimes objects can cling to their new owners, especially if they have weak energy. Imagine that an old dresser brought from Europe might have witnessed tragedies from centuries ago, and now this dresser stands in your bedroom and every night you cannot fall asleep. Are you sure this is just a coincidence? Cayce would say, no, it is not a coincidence. Objects soaked with someone else's suffering can literally whisper to you on a subconscious level. In one of his well-known sessions, Cayce told a story of a woman who began to have constant nightmares after she inherited an antique doll from her great-grandmother. He described how the doll had preserved an energetic imprint of long years of fear and pain that its owner had endured. When the doll was removed from the house, the nightmares stopped. That is why he advised thinking carefully before keeping anything in your home that is connected with death. Yes, objects are memory, history, but sometimes the price of that memory is too high. He said, not everything that comes to you from the dead should be yours. Do you want to know which specific items Cayce considered the most dangerous and why some of them can literally ruin your life? This is not a trivial list, but a key to understanding how the invisible world coexists with ours. And if you are ready, I will tell you about it right now. Have you ever wondered why old mirrors cause such a feeling of unease? Edgar Cayce said that mirrors are among the most sensitive objects that can store the energy of the past. They seem to imprint not only the reflection, but also a part of the soul of the person who looked into them, especially if that person left this life under difficult circumstances. Cayce claimed that a mirror can become a real portal for the energy that is stuck between worlds. Imagine you found an old mirror in the attic or bought it at a sale. It looks beautiful, with a darkened frame and antique design. But who knows how many faces have looked into it, how much suffering or anger it has seen. Cayce was certain. Such objects can invisibly influence the atmosphere of a house, as if attracting the shadow of the past. And if strange things start happening in the house, quarrels, illnesses, constant small misfortunes, it is worth wondering whether you have such witnesses of the past. Once he said a phrase that sends chills down the spine. Objects are silent witnesses of other people's fates. Sometimes they speak louder than words. This is especially true for items connected to illnesses or death. For example, Cayce always warned against keeping bed linens or clothing of a deceased person if they passed away after long suffering. Why? Because fabrics coming into contact with the body absorb its energy, emotions, even remnants of illness. In his visions, he often emphasized that a human being is not only a body, but also energy, a field that surrounds us and is absorbed into the things we touch. When this energy moves to the world of the dead, fragments of it remain on objects, and if someone else starts using these items, it is as if they are connecting to someone else's fate. Imagine putting on a coat that was worn by a person who spent half their life in depression. It's no surprise that soon you might start feeling an unexplained sadness, as if something is pressing on your soul. You might say, but it's just clothing. Yet don't we sometimes feel that objects seem alive, that they carry something more than just fabric or metal? Cayce claimed that personal items, jewelry, watches, letters, are especially dangerous. He said that a ring or bracelet is a closed circle that concentrates energy on itself, especially if this object has witnessed intense emotions. There are countless stories about rings that bring misfortunes to their new owners. One man shared how he bought an antique ring at an auction. Within a week of buying it, his life began to fall apart. He lost his job, quarreled with loved ones, and started having health problems. When he decided to return the ring, it turned out that it had belonged to a person who had died under strange circumstances. Edgar Cayce would have explained it simply. The ring was saturated with someone else's suffering, and this energy transferred to the new owner. But what should be done with such objects? Cayce said that an item can be cleansed, but this requires special effort. Sometimes fire helps. The old traditions of burning the belongings of deceased people did not appear by accident. Sometimes water helps, sometimes prayer and strong intention. But if an object is truly dangerous, it is better not to keep it at all. Interestingly, Cayce also warned against collecting random trophies from places of tragedy. Fragments of houses, objects found in cemeteries or abandoned hospitals. He said that these items can be literally soaked with pain and fear. And if you bring them home, you inadvertently let into your life the energy that should have stayed in the past. He often repeated that we must not treat the world of the dead carelessly, not because this is mysticism, but because we understand too little about how energy and the memory of objects work. He advised, if you doubt an object, get rid of it. Don't keep near you what makes your heart stop. Have you ever seen how children sometimes refuse to play with a toy found in the house? Children feel more than adults because their minds are not yet clogged with logic and skepticism. They sense the invisible wave that we fail to notice. And if a child is afraid of an old doll or a book, listen, perhaps that object truly holds someone else's shadow. Are you curious which other items Cayce called particularly heavy and how to recognize them? In the next part, we will look deeper into these mysteries and find out why some objects seem to attract misfortune. Edgar Cayce repeatedly emphasized that certain objects can be real traps for the human soul. He said that items belonging to the deceased should be treated with special caution, as they are capable not only of preserving memory, but also of carrying someone else's fate. He paid particular attention to jewelry, especially those worn for many years. Gold and silver, Cayce said, are like antennas. They absorb and hold emotions as if weaving them into their shine. If the owner of the jewelry lived in suffering or anger, this energy can literally seep into the life of the new owner. In his sessions, there were repeated cases where women began to get sick or experience depression after they started wearing old earrings or rings inherited from relatives. Cayce believed that the most dangerous objects are those connected with a tragic death. For example, watches that stopped at the moment of their owner's death he called beacons of the past. They don't just record time, they freeze it together with the emotion that existed in that final moment. Imagine that such a watch contains a scream of fear or pain. Would you want to keep that in your home? Another interesting point Cayce made was about books and letters of the deceased. You might think, what could be wrong with them? But he claimed that paper is an incredibly strong carrier of energy. If a person wrote a lot about their suffering, then each line becomes like a thread connecting their emotions with reality. Cayce told a story about a woman who kept the letters of her deceased husband filled with pain and resentment. These letters seemed to prevent her from starting a new life, as if pulling her back to the past. Only when she decided to burn them did the heaviness disappear. You might say that all this is just coincidence, but why then do thousands of people around the world notice that after they got rid of old items associated with the dead, their lives changed for the better? Perhaps it is not about mysticism, but about that subtle energy Cayce spoke of. Sometimes he mentioned that certain objects can literally look for new owners. This is especially true for objects with a strong emotional charge: weapons, musical instruments, toys. He considered weapons the most dangerous, as they absorb aggression, fear, and death. Cayce claimed that even knives used to kill can retain the memory of a crime and affect whoever picks them up. He said that musical instruments are a special category. Imagine an old piano on which someone once played while experiencing the strongest emotions. It carries the vibrations of those emotions. Sometimes such instruments can cause new owners to feel anxiety or even cry for no apparent reason. An even more mysterious category, according to Cayce, was dolls and figurines. He claimed that they are capable of absorbing pieces of the soul of the person who interacted with them for a long time. Dolls with tragic histories are especially dangerous. In America, there are still legends about dolls that come to life at night or begin to move. Cayce would say that the point is not that the doll is alive, but that it holds the energy of the person who once owned it. And here arises the question, what should you do if you find an object in your home that causes you unease? Cayce advised first, listen to your intuition. If an object causes unpleasant feelings, it is better to get rid of it. But simply throwing it away is sometimes not enough. The energy can stick. He recommended cleansing rituals, washing the item under running water, smudging with herbs or candles, saying a prayer. He especially emphasized the power of fire. Fire is the only element that can break the connection between the world of the living and the dead, Cayce said. That is why burning certain objects is not cruelty, but protection. Cayce also warned of the dangers of collecting antiques. He said that antiques are often saturated with the fates of others, and not everyone can withstand this energy. If you truly want to keep old items, they need to be cleansed regularly, both mentally and physically. But what about family heirlooms? Could they also be dangerous? Cayce did not deny the value of memory, but he advised checking exactly what you keep. There are things that carry light, he said, and there are those that carry shadow. To understand the difference, you need to feel if an object radiates warmth, joy, it is safe. If it brings coldness and anxiety, it is better to let it go. Do you want to know how Cayce advised recognizing dangerous objects and why he believed that some items can literally curse a family for generations? We will talk about this in the next part. Edgar Cayce often repeated that the energy of the past can be so strong that it is capable of intertwining with the present, destroying the lives of those who are unaware of its influence. He spoke of how certain objects seem to carry a program of fate, and if you don't get rid of them in time, this program will begin to work against you. One of his most unsettling claims was that objects which have witnessed tragedies can literally attract misfortune into a home. Cayce gave the example of a family that inherited an old sideboard with doors darkened by time. At first glance, it was just an ordinary antique, but after it appeared in the house, strange events began. The children fell ill, quarrels between the parents intensified, and at night, everyone felt as if shadows were wandering through the house. Cayce would have said that this object was saturated with the grief of past generations and was looking for a way to continue it. He believed that such things can affect not only psychological states, but also physical health. A human being is part of energy, Cayce said, and if one is surrounded by negative energy, the body begins to deteriorate. He often emphasized that old things are not just memories, but containers for everything a person has lived through, illnesses, fears, sufferings. That is why he advised, do not keep in your home what carries the burden of someone else's fate. Cayce paid special attention to photographs of the deceased. He said that photographs are like imprints of the soul. Photographs taken shortly before death or during illness are particularly dangerous. He believed they can connect the home to the world of the dead. A photograph is not just a picture, he said. It can become a doorway if you stare into it too often, wishing to bring someone back. He advised against keeping large collections of old photos of deceased relatives in plain sight, especially in bedrooms. He also warned about so-called ancestral cursed objects. These are items passed down from generation to generation that carry not only the memory of the family, but also its dark secrets. If a family experienced tragedies, misfortunes, or destructive conflicts, these items can be the source of ongoing bad luck. Cayce recommended carefully analyzing each heirloom. If it is linked to pain, it should either be cleansed or released. He said there is a simple way to determine if an object is dangerous. Take it in your hands and listen to your sensations. If you feel cold, heaviness, or anxiety, it means there is something foreign within the object. Sometimes even a simple touch can cause fatigue or a headache, a clear sign that the item carries a negative charge. Cayce particularly did not recommend keeping items connected to someone's death, the clothing of the deceased, their personal belongings or shoes. He explained this by saying that such things are literally tuned to the vibrations of that person, and after their passing, they can draw their energy trace to themselves. What should you do if such things are already in your home? Cayce gave several tips. The first is cleansing with fire. For example, you can light a candle and, holding the item in your hands, mentally ask for all the negativity to leave. The second is cleansing with water and salt. He said that salt is one of the most powerful natural purifiers. The third is prayer and gratitude. If the object is dear as a memory but carries pain, thank it and let it go with peace, Cayce said. He was convinced that the world of the dead is always near, not to scare us but to remind us we must respect the past but not allow it to rule our lives. Cayce said that objects are like threads connecting us to the unseen, And if you pull the wrong thread, you can get tangled. How many people continue to live surrounded by the shadows of the past without even suspecting that the cause of their problems lies in old objects? Cayce warned that the world around us is much more complex and mystical than we think. We don't see how things affect our destiny, but that doesn't mean that influence doesn't exist. At the end of his talks, he often said, "Clear the space around you to let in the light. Don't keep in your home what carries darkness." These words are especially relevant today, when many of us are surrounded by things whose history we don't know. Perhaps right now, in your home, there is an object that is dragging you down. Look around, feel it. If you suddenly notice something that evokes unpleasant emotions, think, maybe it is time to let it go.